Recently, the Modi government floated an idea called One Nation, One Election. Now, this is not the first time they've come up with this idea. This is actually the fifth time they've floated this idea. This time, they went one step ahead. They constituted a panel under the former president, Ramnath Kovind, and said this panel will now study the idea of a one nation, one election. Now, the government says that India is in a constant campaign mode, that is, permanent campaign, because there are elections in some state or the other every year. So, they said this takes up the time of the government, and because of the model code of conduct that comes in before an election, they said it impacts administration. They also said having different elections costs a lot of money. So, their argument is that if we combine all the elections together and have one nation, one election, it will save on costs, save on time, and will not impact administration. All of this is bogus. Let me tell you why. So, the first thing is when they say India is in a constant election mode, that is not correct. India is not in a constant election mode. Some of India's states are. Few of India's political parties are. Not all. For example, if, say, the state of Bengal is going through an election, what has that got to do with governance or administration or projects or development in the state of Tamil Nadu? Life goes on as normal for the average Tamilian or the Tamil Nadu government. So let us say there's an election in Assam. How is development in Gujarat or governance in Gujarat impacted? Not at all. Haryana is not impacted, or Uttar Pradesh is not impacted, or Karnataka is not impacted. So this notion that because there are elections in different states, India is going through an election is wrong. India's two national parties, the Congress and the BJP, because they are national parties, their national leadership get involved in every state election. Now, for the BJP, whether it is a local body municipal corporation election in Karnataka, or a state election in Uttar Pradesh, or a state election in Orissa, their main campaigner is Narendra Modi and their main election in charge is Amit Shah. Now, Narendra Modi and Amit Shah are also the Prime Minister and the Home Minister of the country. They also have to govern the country. So, they are unable to go campaign as well as govern the country. So, their problem is not the country's problem. It's not the nation's problem. This is the problem for the BJP, and it is their choice to have Narendra Modi and Amit Shah as the election in charges and the election campaigner. That cannot be the country's problem, because when there's an election in some state, because of India's regional parties, other parties are not affected. It's only one party that gets affected. So that is a false argument for one nation, one election. Now let's come to the costs. They say it's very expensive to hold elections in different states. So we must combine all the elections so that it will lead to cost savings. According to the government's own reports and the Election Commission and Niti Aayog, the cost of running elections to all the states and parliament is about 6,000 to 10,000 crores. That is, to put it very simply, it costs 10 rupees per year for one Indian voter. That's the cost. That's the government cost, the taxpayer cost for conducting elections. Now they say if we combine these elections, it will save. The Niti Aayog report says that if we combine all these elections, it will save some amount of money, which means the cost will come down from 10 rupees to 5 rupees. So basically, they want to do a lot of these changes to save 5 rupees per voter per year as costs. They could have saved that money by not building that central vista in Delhi for which they used taxpayer money. So the cost argument is also wrong. What is the third reason they give? From 1952 to 1967, India had one nation, one elections. All the state elections were together. So we must go back to that system. That is again wrong, because that time it was not by design. This was not by design. It just so happened that after independence, all these states started at the same time and they had elections after every 5 years. But after some time, different political parties started to emerge, regional parties started to emerge. DMK in Tamil Nadu, the left parties in Kerala. So different parties started to emerge. Each state started to have its own election schedule as per their own state's politics. So that was not by design, it just so happened. Now, what are the negatives if they bring in one nation, one election? First and foremost, this is an attack on states, state rights. I'll give you an example. In 2018, K. Chandrasekhar Rao was the Chief Minister of Telangana. Telangana was supposed to have its state election in 2019 along with the parliament election. But the elected Chief Minister of Telangana said, no, I want to call for early elections. So he dissolved the assembly and called for elections in 2018. That is the right of the state. That is the right of an elected Chief Minister of a state. Under one nation, one election, they will take away that right. And only the union government will decide and dictate which state should have elections when. Why should only the union government have these powers? And why should these powers be taken away from the states? This is an attack on federalism. So now it is very clear that the reasons that they give for this one nation, one election are false. It is also very clear that this is not a good idea in a country like ours where there are many political parties. Each state has its own election schedule and it will attack states' rights. So why are they doing this? Why did the Modi government suddenly bring this idea? Because last week there was a big news story by two international publications, Financial Times and Guardian. What was that story? The headline said, Narendra Modi linked Adani Group manipulated the share market and increased their value, by two international media headlines. Then there was another international headline that came, which was the G20 summit that is going to happen in India. The Chinese president has refused to come. The Chinese president said, I will not come to India for the G20 summit. The Modi government wanted to distract people's attention away from these headlines. That is why they came up with this one nation, one election idea once again for the fifth time. It has been rejected 4 times and it will be rejected again. So let us not fall for this distraction and let us keep our focus on the main issues, which is what is Narendra Modi's link with Gautam Adani and will Gautam Adani be investigated for the story that was published by Financial Times. Second, what is the real situation between India and China? Has China taken our land? Is China killing our soldiers? What is our government's response? These are the 2 most important questions that we should be focused on. Thank you.